Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is a bit of an outrageous thing that I've been hearing 3 or 4 times over the last week, and it concerned me. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. So I went and looked to see what the truth was. And what bothered me, there was this claim by nationalists 3 or 4 over the space of a short time that suggested that Margaret Thatcher, a person that most of the SNP hate, but she apparently had said some time ago that the SNP could have independence as long as they got the majority of seats at Westminster. So what they're saying is there's already a mandate in place because Maggie Thatcher said it. We achieved it once, and twice, and that gives us the right for independence. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound like the sort of thing Maggie Thatcher would have said. But if she did say it, then it could have been that she was talking about, tongue-in-cheek, the majority of seats in Westminster would be 326, because there's 650 seats in total. Knowing fine well the SNP would never get that. So I thought maybe what she said, tongue-in-cheek, has been taken as gospel by the nationalists. But it turns out it was a lot of shite. Now, the mad thing is, this was a discussion back in the autumn last year when it was actually claimed. And it was actually claimed by Keith Brown, who stood up and said it at the party conference in October last year. Now, I missed it. I must have had a lot more stuff to worry about at the time. Maybe Humza was speaking that day, for example. So I've got no recollection of this being a story at the time, but when I Googled it, well, it kind of was. And there's a few things online about it. So I'm going to use the Daily Express from, let me just get the date, the 17th October 2023. And their headline is Keith Brown accused of using fake quote in the same speech that, ironically, he announces the SNP were going to have a fact-checking service of their own. Right? And that's Deputy Leader, well, it was Deputy Leader then, not now, claimed Margaret Thatcher said a majority of nationalist MPs would be enough for Scottish independence. But there's no record of her sort of saying such a comment. Right? So, Keith Brown's been accused of using a fake quote during a speech where he announced the new SNP fact-checking team. The Nats deputy leader claimed at the party's conference the rebuttal service will actively respond to alleged fake news from unionists. Well, that's quite ironic when his headline and bit of the speech was fake news. Anyway, critics reckon he might need to start with himself after he used a quote from Margaret Thatcher in his speech, despite no evidence she ever said it. Mr Brown told delegates Margaret Thatcher was explicit in recognising the fact that if we win the majority of seats at Westminster election, then it's a mandate for independence. It came the day after the conference backed a plan for SNP to try and start Skexit negotiations if the party wins a majority of seats within the UK when the UK goes to polls next year, which is obviously now. The comment alludes to a popular Nat meme that quotes Mrs Thatcher as saying Scotland does not need a referendum on independence. She just needs to send a majority of nationalist MPs to Westminster to have a mandate for independence. Now, this is a bit, and I'm like, see if he did say that. That could mean 326 seats and the Nats are just grabbing the bits they want. But it turns out she never even said that. Never mind what they think, which is a mandate for a referendum. Mr Brown later repeated his comments in an interview with Broadcasting Scotland. However, the Scottish Express could find no record of the quote existing beyond online memes. Right? The only comment that came close came in 1993 when Thatcher said, as a nation, the Scots have an undoubted right to national self-determination. Thus far, they have exercised that right by joining and remaining in the Union. Should they determine on independence, no English party or politician should stand in their way. The quote was actually used in a Scottish Government paper on Skexit. Scots did exercise the right to vote on their place in the Union in a once-in-a-generation referendum held in 2014. Only Mr Brown's apparent faux pas, Scottish Conservative Deputy Shadow Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution, External Affairs and Culture, that's a big title, that struggled to fit in his business card, Alexander Stewart MSP said, In the very speech where he was launching a misinformation rebuttal unit, it is ironic that Keith Brown made a completely untrue claim about Margaret Thatcher having said that a majority of SNP seats would be a mandate for independence. She never said such a thing. We all know that the Nationalists like to pretend that the interests of the SNP and the Scottish voters are identical. Unfortunately for them, the voters strongly disagree, and this kind of misleading nonsense is not going to convince them. Announcing the fact-checking service, this is fantastic. Mr Brown said you'll see much more content on the party's website and social media in the coming months, clearly marked as coming from the rebuttal unit. I don't think that's happened. Once information is published, it's over to you to share in leaflets, social media feeds, and anywhere you see it. I look forward to seeing the work of the rebuttal unit informing the debate in Scotland's future. Ironically, NAP ministers have been accused of spreading fake news on Scotland's energy capabilities. The Scottish Express reached out to the SNP for the source of the alleged Mrs Thatcher quote, but has so far not received a response. Incredibly, Mr Brown then repeated the claim again on BBC Politics Live on Tuesday afternoon, hours after the Express had asked for a source. Now, so what's happened here? It's like all paper reports when they do something. They always ask the party they're talking about to, give them the opportunity to reply, and they never get back to them. So what's obviously happened, they've put it to the SNP that this is possibly incorrect. And the SNP have obviously looked at it and thought, shit, we can't prove it as correct. We might better be doing something about it. Now, ironically, if I just go to, give me 1 wee second. If I go into the SNP's own website and I search for Keith Brown, guess what's still on their website? His speech from last year, after it had been pointed out to them that it was a lot of tripe. It's still on their website. Where are we? June? 7-8 months later. They are... I mean, how you could not embarrass these people and give them a red neck with a blowtorch and a branding iron, right? They're just shameless. Absolutely shameless. Now, as I say, I'd heard this comment 3 or 4 times over the last week, 10 days. And by the way, no from all crackpots, somebody that I think is quite sensible. But what it shows there is this human trait. Then see when you hear something that fits your narrative, it doesn't matter if it's true or it's untrue. You'll just grab it and use it and repeat it. And that's why we hear such nonsense at times. We've been hearing from the SNP about how they've taken 100,000 kids out of poverty. Yet, recent figures from the Scottish Government's own website suggest child poverty's went up, right? So, this is what they do, and they've made a career out of it. And if anybody sees anything that's complete bollocks that they've said, just drop me a message. I'll soon cover it. And I'll have our own rebuttal service on this one that the SNP have been talking about forever. So I'm just going to try and have a look at the SNP conference. Let's see, there we go. Keith Brown's address to the SNP 23 conference. And if you just get it, it actually says more than what's been quoted, right? Where are we? It's an absolute belter. There we go. And it is funny thinking about the current Tory party. She might these days be viewed as a wet liberal, but Margaret Thatcher had different views on this. I say that because if you think about this, Margaret Thatcher would never have had in her cabinet Enoch Powell. And yet Rishi Sunak has got Suella Braverman in one of the highest offices of state. But the point is, Thatcher was explicit in recognising the fact that if we win the majority of seats at Westminster election, then it's a mandate for independence. Keep that in mind when we find people coming forward claiming that it doesn't count for Scotland. So it's there. It's still there. I might even put a wee link to it in the comments below after the newspaper 7 months suggesting to them that they might want to check because there's no evidence whatsoever anywhere that she actually made these comments at all. So, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. If you hear anything from any nationalist that sounds a bit weird, let me know. I'll go and investigate it and find out if it's true or total bunkum. But I think in most instances, with total bunkum. So there we go. We'll be rebuttal service, free rebuttal service from Big Craig about the SNP, and I offer my services free of charge to any unionists that listen to any pish of any nationalists. So, as I say in all my videos, if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already done so, please consider subscribing. But the most important thing of all, as long as you're not the SNP, this fake rebuttal service, or that crackpot Keith Brown. See everybody else. Have a great day. Cheery bye now.